Our approach is really threefold. We educate, inspect, and document. When it comes to cutting corners on cost and things like that, you can always upgrade your carpet or your cabinets and things like that. When it comes to foundation and roofing, there's really no good way to cut a corner.
All right, now we're coming to the spicy parts.
Oh, that wasn't the spicy part?
Let's talk about another industry, insurance restoration contractors. I have seen a lot of abuse of the code, a lot of like pushing limits all the way. Like, when is it good for a restoration contractor to engage with the code official? Because I feel like a lot of contractors using guys like you to get what they want, approval of the claim. And if they get it once, they're going to try it again, lawyers involved. And let's talk about those relationships, good, bad, and ugly.
This is one of my favorite topics because it is spicy, it is interesting, and it is something that needs to be addressed. Again, I'm wearing two hats. My hat primarily is as a designated code official. I'm doing the administration, the permitting, and the inspections within a jurisdiction. And again, those are under the confines of a permit fee. Everything comes down to the amount of resources. But when we're working outside of that, and I'm wearing a different hat as a code consultant, I have more resources so I can get deeper into the subject. And that's where we're starting to learn the difficulty that's involved. Again, the most recent example, and this is one thing I was hoping that we could talk about, was a recent example where there was a hail claim. There was hail damage to a house. And it was a hardboard lap siding, so the siding was fairly robust and durable. That wasn't damaged, but the windows were. So the windows were, and again, I'm not the insurance guy. I don't even go down that road at all. But what happened was we were on site talking with the insurance adjuster. The referee was at an appraisal, as well as some different contractors. And the assertion was that it would be allowable to take a Sawzall to cut out a window from an existing elevation, take it out, take a new window, cut that nailing flange off, insert it into the opening, jam screw it, and caulk it. And that was exactly what was being proposed. And I was standing...
By who? By a contractor or by insurance company?
Both. By the insurance company and then also the contractor who they wanted to do the work. They had a licensed general contractor on site who said if this process were allowed by the local code official, it was okay. And that's the mushroom cloud that's going to be coming out of this, is that we are starting to pick that and say, no, the code is very distinct in that the manufacturer's installation criteria is an extension of the code. And the building official's interpretation of the code cannot essentially deviate or wipe away the code. So if a local building inspector said, I understand that this manufacturer does not allow you to cut off their nailing flange and screw through the jambs, but I'm going to say it's okay. Based on my experience and based on my authority, I'm going to say you can install that window the way I just described. There's a section very distinct in Chapter 1300 of the Building Code which says, no, you can't do that. And that's what was so glaringly apparent to me. This wasn't but a few months ago. And it was in a jurisdiction where I'm not the building official, where I'm not the designated building official.
I see.
So that's the other thing that's important to bring out here is because this question needs to be asked and answered, is that as a licensed building official in the state of Minnesota, do I have the ability to go into a jurisdiction where I'm not the designated and identify and summarize code? That's the question. And it begs to be asked and answered because, again, as the designated building official, he doesn't have, or she doesn't necessarily have, the resources to go out on site and walk around in the cold and let this testimony happen and get involved to say whoever you are, doesn't matter if you're the insurance agent or you're the adjuster, you're the appraiser, whoever you are, is that now, wait a minute, here's the code section that pertains to this instance. There's a big difference between code interpretation and application and just identifying code. Code administration is really where the local designated building official issues permits, does inspections, and does the reporting. That's the job of the designated building official. In a lot of these instances, they can be solved by having another building official or even a contractor that's knowledgeable in the code, that's tested and licensed with their knowledge of the code, identify and summarize the code. That's where this needs to end up, is answering that question.
What was the solution for the project you were working on?
I'm still working on it, actually. I heard a number of times from the people on site that my presence there wasn't warranted and that I didn't have any say in the matter. And I disagree with that completely because there's enough gray areas in the code. Let's not make up more. When it's black and white, let's identify the black and white. Black and white is manufacturer's installation and criteria, again, as an extension of the code. There was no installation details from that manufacturer of that window that allowed you to jam screw that window into the opening. One contractor on site was basically identifying the code as I was, and another contractor said, no, we do it in these jurisdictions all the time, and the inspectors around here allow that, so therefore it's okay. And again, I want to remind us all that the administrative provisions clearly state that the interpretation of the local building official cannot waive the code.
So, contractor wanted to do it his ways. Like, what was it? If insurance would be willing to pay for the siding, is it your solution to remove the siding? To do it your way, flange at the front?
Just to be correct, it's not my way, it's the code way. The code correct.
So your solution would be remove the siding. Would the insurance be okay with paying that?
Apparently that was the contention, is that they didn't want to pay for the removal of the siding. They wanted to do a different scope of work, which was a lesser scope of work, if you will. Right. But the code way, again, in this instance is very interesting because it's very clear in my mind, unless I'm completely missing something. As far as the direction of the code and the direction of the manufacturers, it was very clear. But it also seemed apparent that the people that were participating in this process were using the assertion, whether it be true or not, I don't know. I never did follow up with that local jurisdiction to see if they had in fact allowed this. That would be an interesting question to ask. But they were using the statement from a contractor who said, no, I do this all the time, it's just fine. I was there as a building official in the state of Minnesota.
But you have to approve his work. He cannot do what he wants. He has to still abide the code.
That's true. And I don't know in that jurisdiction how they administered the code or what inspections they did. There's a lot of times where a work is done without a permit or a permit is issued and there isn't necessarily the follow-up that you might expect. So it's really hard to understand in this situation particularly what the follow-up would have been.
And what are the options? Like, let's say a contractor goes in and does it his way. You would never close the permit. Would you fine him? Would you issue correction?
There's a couple of pieces to that. First of all, a lot of times when there's a correction, for example, if we write an inspection record or there's a correction that goes out, if the contractor doesn't do anything and a certain amount of time passes, permits expire after 6 months of inactivity. So if we don't hear from the contractor, this is a different approach from different building officials, but after 6 months of inactivity, we are well within our bounds to stamp it as expired, close it out and move on. That depends, whether we would do that or not depends on the experience and the amount of resources again, but also depends on the circumstances of the job itself. We are a little different in that we try to do as many reminders as we can. Phone call, email. Dimitri, your job's about to expire. We're still waiting on this follow-up. But at the end of it, if we don't receive resolution to that, we just started this last quarter, and I'll let you know how it works out. But we're also sending that inspection record that shows it was expired, not only to you as the contractor, but also to the owner. It's their house. They should know that the person that they hired didn't follow through on their obligations. And that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. We've seen a number of instances where a contractor will sit on an inspection record or a correction and not follow through with it, knowing that in most instances it'll get expired. And then who's the wiser?
Can it affect his license?
Absolutely. And again, depending on the severity of the job, the severity of the correction, we have the ability and really the responsibility to inform DLI, Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, for contractors that are not following through on their permits or not following through on their corrections. There's an outlet for us to contact the state. What they do with that information, I'm not sure. I'm sure it depends on, again, the severity of the correction and also their workload.